and so this is preserved for posterity. So character creation in Vanguard was massively larger than most MMOs after it, even to this day. I mean, you know, you're gonna have your characters and races. Most MMOs have characters and races, like World of Warcraft. You know, you'll have like your well, Horde and Alliance are more like factions, but you'll have like your gnome, let's say your dwarf, your human, your elf as races, and then you'll have classes like mage, you know, like a mage, necromancer, ranger, archer, so on and so forth. Well, in let's see if we can't create a new character. Yeah, here we can at least do the character creation screen. In Vanguard, there are 19 races and 15 classes. Yeah, to me, that's a big deal, worth making a big deal out of and pointing out. To me, that's worth pointing out and making sure you get the gist of that. Because that's a lot. For anybody that's used to playing MMOs, that's a lot. And here's the races on the left. You can mouse over them. And I'm gonna mouse over them a little bit as I keep talking, so they'll be up there to read, so people can pause the video and read it. But there's racial abilities. There'll be racial abilities, but they're also divided by the continents, because there's 3 continents on Thestra. So originally, like even originally in World of Warcraft, MMOs used to have restrictions based on like class and race restrictions and faction. I'll get to the classes in a moment, Shadow, but the classes you can see over on the right, and they're divided into 4 main areas, which I'll talk about momentarily. But for instance, we're now looking at the Kojian races. So there's a lot of elf races that live on Kojian. As you can see, there's a Kojani human, wood elf, half elf, but then there's also orc, goblin, and Rocky, which are sort of like a fox, and like a amorphic, that's not the word, amorphous, like fox type character. And I can click on that and can see kind of what they look like. But now here's Kalia. The continent Kalia has Kalathari humans, gnomes, dark elves, and here's another unique race, the Kurashasa. And they're sort of more like a tiger-ish race, like tigers. So they have that. Then they have a Mordebi human and a Varanthari. And they all have, you notice there's all kinds of abilities and racial abilities and modifiers. Vanguard was deep with all this stuff in the races because there's like 19 or more factions in the game. Yeah, World of Warcraft has what, 2 factions? So there's, you know, there's a lot of, and factions, there was a ton of balance between. For instance, the Varanthari, you can get 10 attribute customization points each level, plus 2 con, plus, you know, but the racial abilities, it had desert skin, the generation spent. Now, the classes, which Shadow, told you I'd get to. Here are the classes. Now, it used to be like I said, there used to be restrictions on things. And you can do male and human for anything. So here's female, or I mean male and human. I mean male and female. So here's female, human. So here's the female version of these races. Here's even a female orc. So you can do that. But anyways, the classes are over here on the right. Now, they did boil all classes down, not into a trinity, because, you know, most people know the trinity. You have your DPS, damage dealer, DPS, which is usually like a rogue. Then you have your healer, and then you have your tank, right? That's the MMO holy trinity. And they sort of did that. They divided things into 4. They divide classes into 4 categories in Vanguard. Under here you have your protective fighters, your offensive fighters, your healers and casters. Now, under Protective Fighter, you have a Warrior, a Paladin, and a Dread Knight. I'm just going to go through these. On the Offensive Fighter, you have your Ranger, your Rogue, your Monk, which is like Kung Fu kind of deal, and then your Bard, which everybody kind of knows a Bard from like Lord of the Rings and other MMOs. You're kind of constructing musical attacks, which is really neat in Vanguard, by the way. Here's your healer classes. There's 4 of them for healer. There's a Cleric, there's a Shaman, there's a Disciple, and a Blood Mage. I tried a Blood Mage one time. They're really cool, because Blood Mages kind of are like the necromantic type, where they're actually transferring life from your opponent to like an ally or yourself. So it's kind of like you're draining them and healing you. I mean, you find that in things like in what is it, the Shadow Priest, I think, is similar in World of Warcraft to that. And then you have casters, and you have a sorcerer. These are all magic casters: sorcerer, druid, your psionicist, which are the master of the psionic energies. Their abilities allow them to blast a foe with mental energy. This is kind of an interesting one. And then you have a necromancer. You have the power to raise minions up from the dead to, to fight for you. So there's similarities you'll see with other games and that, but you can click on these now and get a little bit of information, which kind of is off the screen because my screen resolution, this doesn't resize properly to show you all the words, all the descriptions, but you can click on each one of these, which I will briefly go back and click on all of these because I'm going to make a highlight of this, and I want you to be able to read all of this, so on your own time you can go back and pause at each one of these if you need to, so that way, I'm not going even if it seems like I'm going too fast right now, it will still have all the information and you can pause it. So, but you can read a little bit about all this. Hey Deviant, how's it going? I thought I saw you pop into the chat room. Rogues are deadly combatants, and then there's recommended attributes. So they kind of recommend where you should spend your points when you buy all this stuff. Now, if I remember right, the Dread Knight was a special class, but I think they removed a lot of the restrictions over the years. Like I said, originally Vanguard had a lot of restrictions because in the old heyday of MMOs like World of Warcraft, things like the restrictions between factions meant more, and they slowly got rid of that stuff. Even Blizzard got rid of that stuff, but as other newer MMOs came out over the last 5 to 7 years, that kind of stuff wasn't very popular with MMO players. It wasn't a very popular. It became less and less popular in MMO. Players became like, oh, I don't want to be restricted. I don't want to be, I don't want to not be able to talk to the other faction, and so MMO companies and developers started getting rid of those features. But that's essentially what I wanted to show you, and I will click over on these humans because there is a little bit to read about them, so this way you can read on your own time later after I make a highlight. You can read all this on your own time. So I'm just going to click through these, and I do have it set on female right now, but like I said, you can switch to male. There's male counterparts. Like for instance, this is the default look for the gnome. It looks pretty cool, I think, even though the graphics are admittedly a bit outdated for Vanguard for the character graphics. They always did a better job with the like buildings in the world, the terrain and architecture than they did with their characters, I think. Although some of their characters do look nice. Now, the Rocky are really kind of cool. Here's the Goblin. And I'm clicking back on these because down here on the bottom left of the screen, the man-to-be, these savage raiders would pose a threat to the whole of Talent. So there is descriptions. Now, there is and is not. They didn't want to have straight bad guy, good guy in the world of Talon in Vanguard. So originally, they made some. They pitted different races against each other. And they didn't really make like here's all the good guys and here's all the bad guys. They took different races and just pitted some against each other. And those were kind of the restrictions in, like, for instance, a lesser giant might be unwelcome if you take a lesser giant into, say, the orc goblin territory, or say and later on you could even change your standings with the factions, so you could become popular with them and friendly, so the NPCs wouldn't attack you. But like last night, Durkin, who's a veteran player, he popped into the dwarf area where I'm at, because I'm a dwarf. But he gets attacked. He has to be careful because he's kill on sight in that area. So yeah. And anyways, I wanted to say hi to Demand. Thanks for popping in. How's it going? How's it going to everybody who's just kind of coming in, trickling in? Okay, so that's a look at the character creation, and that's just what I wanted to do. I want to make a highlight later, so let's pop back into the game. I'm gonna log in on Abernathy, and I'm in Tanvu, I think, right now. Yeah, we're in Tanvu right here.